Hello, welcome to the Fifth Star Podcast. I'm Jamie,
And I'm Albert.
and we're trying to find our next 5-star rated movie. And when we do, this podcast will become a complete unknown.
Nice. So in this episode, we're reviewing A Complete Unknown, which is a biopic about Bob Dylan. And it actually got nominated for 8 Oscars this year.
Dang.
Yeah. So we wrote down what we gave it secretly. I had 5 stars on the other side of this whiteboard. We will guess what each other gave it. And I'm going to guess that you gave it a 3.5.
Okay.
Because you like music.
I'm going to guess you gave it a 2.5.
Okay.
Because I don't think you liked this movie, but I also don't think you disrespected it enough to give it a 2.
Disrespect. Okay. I mean, we'll see. We will reveal after we give our initial spoiler-free thoughts.
Okay.
And then after we reveal our scores, we get into spoilers. So, what did you think about A Complete Unknown?
Well, I was really mixed.
Okay.
I mean, I finally saw it. Sorry for the delay, but I thought the acting was amazing. Everyone killed it.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised by the Johnny Cash guy too. He did good.
He was good.
He really looked like Johnny Cash too. I really liked Timothy Chalamet's performance. He always just kills it, and I think he has this just natural ability to become somebody else. It's so weird. He really disappears from the screen every time I've seen him in any movie. The only movie where I feel like he's the most Timothy Chalamet is probably in Little Women.
Oh,
But
okay.
every other role he's been in, it's a completely different person. And I think what's really impressive, and I saw somebody else talk about this, but his mannerisms, like his physicality is so good. Like how he physically becomes a different person in his movements.
Yeah.
And they're small, you know, it's not like he's overacting. Although in Willy Wonka, he was a bit over the top. But it's just very impressive how he's able to do that. Like create new tiny mannerisms and habits that really just bring the character to life.
Yeah.
Off screen.
Like even when he's just sitting in a chair
in
this movie.
He's like sitting kind of weird.
Yeah.
Or something.
I haven't seen Bob Dylan sitting in a chair before, like the real Bob Dylan, but it feels like right.
That's like how he would sit.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I will say what disappointed me was that I watched this movie because I wanted to know about Bob Dylan. And I definitely feel like I didn't learn really anything about Bob Dylan. And I get it's called A Complete Unknown. But I kind of thought we'd still get some answers by the end.
Yeah. I mean, basically, you just jump straight into him showing up in New York.
Yeah.
And it's kind of his rise from a complete unknown artist to becoming Bob Dylan as we know him. But, I mean, you have very little references to allusions to maybe his past.
Yeah.
But really barely
or even
anything
his personality.
About yeah.
Like, it's all a secret, and he even complains about that. He's like, oh, people are trying to, like, make me what they want me to be. But then it's like, well, you're also not presenting who you are because it feels like you're hiding everything.
Yeah. And I think that's who Bob Dylan really is.
Yeah.
He's very kind of, mysterious. He isn't very public about a lot of things, it seems, even though he's such a big public figure. And the movie itself kind of reflects that.
It does, and it does that well. But if you're going to make a movie about a person or a character, your story ends up being about nothing if your character reveals nothing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I felt by the end. I was like, this story really wasn't about anything.
Yeah.
Other than fame?
Yeah, I mean, there are some themes that we could get into later. I think that I was trying to pull out. But I agree with you. Mostly, I think the performances are really good. The story is just, there's not much there.
Yeah.
Now, I will say the music and the musical performances especially, I think, were very good.
Amazing.
Yeah. And the fact that Timothy Chalamet learned to play guitar from scratch, essentially.
Yeah.
Over 5 years to play this role. And
Amazing.
he executed it was really impressive. Apparently, they recorded like in the studio and they were gonna use that playback, for the movie and the recording and just kind of dub it. So they were gonna do that, but Timothy Chalamet was so committed to no, he showed up on set. I think it was the scene that he was playing for Woody in the hospital. And Timothy was really adamant on no, let's do it for real and
Let's
record
do it
it live.
live,
Yeah. And even all the sound people on set were trying to fight the director and being like, no, this is gonna cause so many issues and edit and whatever if it doesn't match and all that.
Oh man.
Yeah, but then basically Timothy just killed it live.
That's
and
amazing.
Yeah, and then apparently James Mangold was crying that night because he was so overwhelmed by this is gonna actually work. Yeah, so
it's a great moment.
I think Timothy Chalamet, and then Monica Barbaro, who plays Joan Baez, she was fantastic.
She sounded just like her.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with Joan Baez's music. Are you? I don't really know.
Only the Diamonds and Dust song.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, but I thought she was great, and apparently she learned how to sing for this movie.
What?
Yeah, which is crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and then even Edward Norton and the guy who played Johnny Cash, they all
Ed Norton does sound just like what Pete's
Seeger.
Yeah, sounds just like him.
Yeah,
so weird.
But those four were all real. They were singing their own music.
Yeah, that's
amazing.
amazing.
And even playing their own music, I think too.
And I think what was cool about it was every time there was a song on screen, that was the main point of the movie, and there was a lot of subtext in each song, but you had to really be paying attention to the lyrics and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of listen for those lyrics, and those are the only times that you get to see inside of his head.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah, it's almost like we're supposed to understand the story through the songs and what they meant at that point.
Yes.
Of sequence of events, I guess.
Yeah.
But even that, I think the unfolding of the different sequences of events are almost not really explained sometimes.
Yeah.
Where now this is based on a book, it's adapted, and maybe if you had read that whole book and you understand the significance of all these different events and the time in history, but I don't think the movie did much to help us and give us that information.
Yeah. And I think one of the main problems with that is that they kept cutting in the middle of really good scenes.
Yeah.
They kept cutting out of a great moment. And I was like, wait, no, I was into this.
Yeah, and then it'll just time jump.
It'll just time jump.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're like, wait, where are we now? And
yeah.
You have to play catch up.
Even Bob Dylan, he's starting to put out a record, and then next cut, now he's world famous. And you're like, wait, did I just miss something?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you just kind of assume oh, you kind of know what happened in his life. And I don't know. Now I've heard a handful of Bob Dylan songs, but I don't know them that well.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this movie would be great for someone who's already familiar with his life in some degree and very familiar with his music.
Yeah.
But apart from that, going into it, similar to you, I wanted to know more about him.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I came away knowing much about him at all.
I agree, yeah.
And even the things that I did feel like were shown, it made me kind of like him less.
Me too. He was not very redeemable at the end.
You had different moments where people are basically telling him to his face, you're a jerk. And you're watching as a viewer, and you're kind of, I know. So I think the biggest issue I had with this was that this movie feels like it was mainly just a musical or almost like a music video of just his different songs.
Or a documentary or something.
Not even a doc, because a doc usually does explain things.
Yeah.
But now each of the songs, they gave a lot of time. They played most of the whole song straight through. And
they're really pretty and nice to listen to.
Yeah. So that part of it was well done, but it feels like you're just going from one song to the next.
Yeah.
And you have some fillers of what's happening in his life, what's going on, in between those songs, but not really well fleshed out. And so it kind of feels like I'm just watching a series of music videos. And there was actually a reviewer that I thought on Letterboxd, who I follow, who put this really well. He said, this movie is it assumes that the Bob Dylan songs in and of themselves are so powerful that you don't actually need any context
Yeah.
or character development or anything. Like, you just put the song, play one Bob Dylan song after another,
Yeah.
and you're gonna assume that, oh yeah, everyone's gonna just be amazed by it and blown away because it's Bob Dylan, you know?
Yeah.
And he is a great songwriter, but I don't know, like, maybe I'm just kind of dense, but I felt like I needed more.
I definitely felt like a little dumb at points because I was like intently listening to the lyrics, like trying to decipher the meaning and then coming up with nothing.
And you're actually really good at that too.
Well,
you're really good with picking up lyrics, and
maybe it's because I
reading
was
into them.
also trying to pay attention to the visuals simultaneously. And so it's just really hard to stay focused. Like, I almost needed the lyrics to be written at the bottom of the screen.
Okay.
Maybe that would have helped, but
yeah, I don't know. You know, one of the major themes here, which we can unpack more in detail in spoilers, is this kind of pivotal moment in musical history, I guess, where Bob Dylan, who came out of like a folk background, kind of big up and coming folk artist, starts to introduce electric guitar. And so the movie is based off a book called Dylan Goes Electric. The original screenplay for the movie was supposed to be called Going Electric or something like that. So that's kind of like the pivotal point that this whole movie's building towards. And the significance of that, and this whole thing of tradition versus kind of the modern, and, you know, breaking tradition.
Like, what is a genre? And
yeah. And he, I guess he was kind of like a rebel, and, you know, so there's like that kind of stuff happening, and they do tease parts of that, but I felt like, I mean, we're watching this decades later. Electric guitar is like not even that big of a deal now, right?
Yeah.
The movie didn't do good enough of a job, I think, of helping us to understand how kind of revolutionary this was. And because I thought that part was kind of totally lost on me. Now, I think maybe part of the other reason why I was so mixed on this movie was because the only Bob Dylan song that I mean, I know I've heard like a Rolling Stone before, but
Me too.
I think the song that I'm most familiar with him of his, and the one that I heard that really made me understand just how great of a songwriter he was Hurricane, where he takes the whole thing with Reuben Carter and him getting wrongfully convicted, and the whole song is just like the full story unpacked to like music.
Wow.
And it's just so well done that when I first heard that, it was because of the Denzel Washington Hurricane movie. That's when I first heard that.
Wow.
And he did it like as this stuff was like all happening in society, right? So yeah, like I was like waiting for that song the whole time, and then it never, like, they never played it. So I was like, oh man, the one song that I really love of his and I really know that I could get excited about, they didn't even play.
Dang.
But yeah,
was that later in his career?
I guess, you know, like when the whole like social unrest and riots, and they're kind of, people start to look to Bob Dylan as, oh, are you going to be like a political activist? You know, that whole thing. And then he kind of does a little bit of that, and then he kind of turns away and says, no, I don't want to be pigeonholed into that thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's about when maybe that song came about.
Okay.
So anyway, let's get to our
Spoilers.
scores. Yeah. You guess I would give it a 2.5 out of 5, and I gave it a 3.0.
Dang.
I was leaning 2.5, but I think just the musical performances were impressive enough.
You nailed it.
Oh, okay. 3.5.
I did go above because also the musical
music.
Performances and just the acting. Like, I didn't mention this before, but I thought Elle Fanning also killed it. Like,
yeah.
She made me really feel her character's emotions without having to say a word. And yeah, she was definitely being wronged, so it's easy to sympathize.
Yeah.
But just her subtle facial expressions and everything, I was very impressed by. I wish there was more of her. Yeah. I wanted more of her in the movie. So, yeah.
Yeah, she was like the one of the few elements of the movie that actually introduced any kind of drama or conflict, I thought.
Yeah, and like I feel like that was the one moment too in the movie where it feels like Bob Dylan might actually change because, you know, when she runs away and then they have that moment by the fence, it sort of feels like an on the fence moment.
Yeah.
Where Bob Dylan is going to have to make a choice here.
Yeah.
And he ends up choosing what I feel like is the more selfish thing.
Yeah.
But it's also, I guess, more true to who he is.
Yeah. Because you're kind of hoping that he
picks
like
her.
runs after her and says, no, like, stay. And yeah, because that was a good moment. It was. But he just lets her walk.
Yeah.
And
she's like, I'm a plate. And it's like, yeah, you're a plate. Bye.
Yeah. And I think that whole part of him. So, first of all, I thought one thing I really didn't like about this movie is he shows up and then he very quickly meets, was that Pete Seeger and Woody, and plays a song for them, and they go, oh, you're really good, and here, let's hook you up with a label. And then he's putting out albums. It was so quick, such a quick rise. Now, he wasn't famous at that point, but that I thought it would just have been a little harder, right? Now, he was obviously so talented that
this is based on a true story.
Yeah,
so.
It wouldn't have taken him long, I guess. But then he also quickly, like the first, he meets Elle Fanning, and then they get together. So
immediately,
it just seems like everything in his life fell, in place like very quickly, and then he starts to, cheat on her.
Yeah.
With Joan Baez.
And it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and then you're just kind of like, man, you kind of been blessed, as this like up and coming star, and I feel like you're just kind of poo-pooing all over it. I don't know. It's like, don't you appreciate just how lucky you are?
And I think that's because he's so impossible to read.
Yeah.
That you're like, why are you doing this? I can't tell because I don't know what you're thinking. Like,
yeah. And I think that seems like the way he really is. Like,
right.
He knows he's a genius.
Right.
And so he kind of
But it's really hard to have a protagonist that you can't read.
Yeah. Yeah, because even in the relationships, the love triangle, like, you don't really know why he's with Joan. Like, does he really care about her? Is it just to have an affair? Does he... I mean, he seems like he really cares about Sylvie, but I think that's her name, right? Sylvie? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then he's also not willing to really make the commitment and be exclusive, and I don't know. And
yeah, that was frustrating.
So it was very hard to sympathize with him when you just feel like he's just using people.
Yeah.
And doesn't really care for either of them, really.
Yeah. That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
Going kind of back to the way that it was sort of edited, mm-hmm. There were just a lot of scenes where moments between him and Sylvie, like when they're arguing, that I wanted more of, and then it just like quickly cut away and time jumped again. Mm-hmm. And I think I wished that they had just stayed in those moments, especially the emotional ones, a little bit longer. But then on top of that, there were also scenes that felt really random and disconnected from the rest of the story. For example, when they're doing that little TV special, mm-hmm. and Ed Norton's character is hosting it, and we meet that blues guy who's so good. He was so good. And then he kind of has a bonding moment with Bob Dylan there, and Bob Dylan shows up late, and it's kind of embarrassing, but then they like make it work. And then we just cut out of that scene, like right in the middle of when it was really getting good.
Yeah.
And I was like, why are they doing this? Like, by the end, I kind of wanted that all to make sense, but I do feel like I was left feeling confused. And I wanted more of those pieces where we actually got to see, I don't know, Bob Dylan's sort of coming off the screen.
Yeah.
Now,
there was one review I was listening to. It was on a different podcast, and they actually made a really interesting kind of connection. So they were saying that the love triangle of Bob Dylan and Elle Fanning and Joan Baez, like, that is kind of a representation and a microcosm of his kind of love triangle between traditional folk music and kind of electric rock. And so he's kind of playing both as he's trying to decide kind of who he wants to be, but at the end of the day, like, he doesn't want to be defined by either or held or trapped by either. And this seems to kind of make sense to me of just maybe his mentality throughout life. Like, Bob Dylan is still, I think, making music now, right?
Yeah.
Which is insane.
And he was like a big part of making this movie too. He was very much involved.
Yeah, and so I think someone who, he's known for some really big classic songs, but is still putting out music that doesn't sound exactly like that anymore. And I think with music, this it's always really interesting, the evolution of artists who are lucky enough to still be relevant beyond their first hit, right? So yeah, you have like a lot of one hit wonders that you never hear from again. But the few that really do kind of create a whole career, and you go through all their kind of albums and they inevitably evolve, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't, and it's this kind of tricky thing because the people who love you for what they fell in love with you for, they want more of that. But you know, you grow as a person, you grow as an artist, and to just keep putting out the same kind of thing feels like you're selling out, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're being true to yourself, you're going to evolve and change. And the times change and tastes change, but then people might kind of jump off the bandwagon. And so it seems like through all of that, he's just kind of had this attitude of, well, I'm just me, and I'm just going to do whatever I feel like. I don't really care about what people expect from me. And whether that's in the music industry or my relationships or people in my life, whatever, right? Like he doesn't want to be tied down to one thing.
Yeah.
Like he's beyond that, right?
Yeah.
He transcends all those things. And yeah, so maybe that it just all kind of speaks to just him as a person in general.
I guess so. I do feel like that love triangle metaphor is a little weak though, just because like it felt to me like Sylvie and Joan were more encouraging the innovativeness. Like, I don't feel like Joan really represented just indie music, and Sylvie definitely didn't represent rock and roll. I don't think. I feel like Sylvie was encouraging him.
I think it was meant to be the other way. So Sylvie is like him staying in a traditional monogamous like relationship.
Oh, I thought it was like saying one of them is indie and one of them is rock and
but
roll.
I think Joan is the more rock.
But she's not. She's indie.
she's like
indie
the
to the core.
Yeah, she's like
the
folk, famous folk artist, right?
She's folk to the core.
Yeah.
So like, and I feel like Sylvie is encouraging him to be innovative. Like I felt she was wanting him to
just be true to himself.
And she
would
was
have been
super encouraging.
To
him and
I know,
everything.
which is why it's so hard to sympathize with him.
Yeah, because you're just like, rooting for her.
She's so great,
and she's so reliable, and like
she was there before he got famous, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like she's just there to.
She clearly loves him so much, even like when he comes over with a black eye, and then she helps him, even though she has another guy at home. But she's like, "You can't do this," but also I'm still gonna help you. Yeah. So she was just great, and I liked her the best.
Oh, okay. I mean, she didn't get nominated, but Monica Barbaro did. I thought Monica Barbaro was good. I like her musical performance was very good.
Yeah.
Even in her like representation of their relationship, I thought she did a good job of like initially it's just kind of a fling, but then as it continues on, like she's kind of wanting more from him, but she's trying to like toe that line. And then there's some great scenes between her and like when they're in the hotel and he's just like writing, and then she starts to be like, what do you like, why'd you just get up in the middle of the night to like write a song? Like, are you just using me for content kind of thing, you know? And it suddenly flips on him. And so just and like even when they're playing, there's all this tension between them, and it's all being communicated just through like their eyes. You know, even though they need to like put on a smile for the performance. Yeah, I thought she was really good.
Yeah, she did do good. I feel like everybody did good. Ed Norton was amazing.
Yeah, he was good too.
He was such a dad the whole time. He was just the band dad, like taking care of everybody, making sure they had coffee. And...
Yeah. But I think that's the other part of this where, you know, it's all about this conflict between Bob Dylan and the festival, the Newport Festival, right? I mean, yeah, I get that it's a folk festival. They want him to play folk music. That's what he's known for. That's what people are there to hear from him. But Bob Dylan's like, no, I want to play my new stuff. But I wasn't given enough context about why this kind of music sounded so unique and revolutionary. Like, other than the fact that he was using electric guitar, like, it's still, I mean, for modern ears, it still kind of has a folky sound, right? Like he doesn't sound like suddenly he's doing like, I don't know, metal or something, you know? But we have no sense of how his albums are doing. Like, how is his new music being received? Is there any backlash from his fans or society. And so what it ends up feeling like, it feels like just this petty little argument between him and this like little film festival.
Yeah.
You know, or music festival. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so it just felt so small scale, and the stakes being so small that I end up just thinking Bob Dylan just played them their stupid, not stupid, their little folk songs. You know?
Play them their stupid folk songs.
I mean, I like some folk music too.
But I think,
what's the big deal? You literally are getting paid to perform at their festival. Just play them.
I felt like he was throwing a fit. Like, at first I could sympathize with him because it felt like Ed Norton wasn't encouraging him to try new things. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, yeah, you need to be, you know, encouraging him to do his new stuff. But then during the actual performance, I was like, oh my word, he's a giant baby.
Yeah.
Because he's just doing his new stuff and everybody is like, no, this isn't what we want. And he's like, I don't care about any of you.
Yeah.
I just care about, you know, doing my own thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, just let this festival be. It doesn't have to represent you. It doesn't have to all be about you.
Yeah. Like, they're not controlling your music that you put out on labels.
It's just for one show.
Yeah.
Like, you can continue to do these performances elsewhere, but like, and thankfully he does come out at the end with the guitar and like just does a single performance or whatever.
Begrudgingly.
Yeah, begrudgingly. But it's like, yeah, I just felt like he was throwing a huge fit.
Yeah.
And it was very irritating.
And I think that's probably where this movie does the biggest misstep, because I think, I haven't read the book, but I'm assuming what the book does is it tells us why he was such a revolutionary, and when he did that moment, why it was such a risk for him maybe, or he was really pushing music to like the future. And, you know, so I think there was like some really big significance of this choice that he made. I mean, I think there are recordings probably still of that festival, and it's like kind of a really seminal moment. But the movie doesn't make it feel like that.
Yeah, the movie kind of made it feel like he just wanted to make the festival all about him.
Exactly.
But I couldn't give it a 3. I just couldn't. I had to go above.
The music and
the performances were too good.
Yeah, I do really respect the performances.
Yeah.
The fact that they learned from scratch is really impressive.
Yeah, and it was like a pleasant vibe, you know, watching the movie. It was a pleasant experience.
Now, just with the Oscars, it got 8 nominations. Which of these do you think it actually has a shot at winning, potentially? Okay. So it got nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, James Mangold, Best Actor for Chalamet, Best Supporting Actor for Edward Norton, Best Supporting Actress for Monica Barbaro, Best Adapted Screenplay, Sound, and Costume Design.
Probably sound and acting.
Sound and one of the acting ones?
Yeah.
Do you think Chalamet could win?
I definitely think Chalamet could win.
Do you think he's going to win? We're going to do an Oscar prediction episode soon, so you don't have to tell me your pick.
I wouldn't be surprised if he won.
I would be pretty surprised if he won.
Really?
Yeah.
Who do you think's going to win?
I would say Adrian Brody is much more the odds-on favorite.
Okay. I haven't seen Brutalist yet, so yeah. I don't know.
Now, that's just the way the awards kind of season seems like it's going. Chalamet hasn't won any of the Best Acting awards, even though he's been nominated. I mean, I don't know. He was good. He was definitely good. I think for me, the one that has the best chance is maybe Supporting Actress, Monica Barbaro.
Okay.
Because she's up against Zoe Saldana, and just with what's happening with Emilia Perez and all the bad press, maybe she has a chance.
Maybe.
She was also really good. Now that you talk about it, I feel like Elle Fanning could have been nominated potentially. Like, she was also very good.
I thought she was more compelling. But I guess she didn't get to sing.
Yeah, that's in a movie that's basically just a bunch of songs stitched together. If you don't get a song,
she didn't get a ton of screen time either. But she was so good.
I mean, you're a singer, so tell me how hard it is for someone who's not musically trained to learn how to sing to the level that
I'm shocked. And I'm also shocked that she was able to like emulate or imitate the actual singer
like her
really
tone
well.
And stuff.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Yeah.
I'm also like, this is off topic, but Andrew Garfield being able to play Jonathan Larson in Tick, Tick, Boom with no singing experience, that was also insane. Like, he's so good. So yeah, I know actors can do it, but I do kind of feel like they already have somewhat of a natural ability.
Oh.
And then
'Cause it's
vocal
like
training just brings that
Mm.
out better.
Because if you're doing like dialect training and all these kinds of things, you already kind of understand how to control your voice.
Yeah, I think to some degree.
Okay,
I
that's
could be
interesting.
completely wrong, but I do feel like people who are taught to sing already have kind of an innate tone. I could be completely wrong.
Yeah. But it was still really impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I feel like it should not win like an adapted screenplay, for example.
Yeah, I agree.
Like the writing was probably the weakest.
The directing was
sound,
fine.
costume design.
I wasn't super awed by it.
Yeah. Maybe sound it could win just because so much of the music and the mixing of all that. And
costume design, I never feel like I always feel like period pieces or specifically based on a true story pieces, because you get to copy actual outfits from actual photographs or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it feels a little cheaper, even though I'm sure it's a really hard task.
Yeah.
But I think Wicked's costumes were way cooler and had way more creativity.
I do agree. I agree with that. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. In a few weeks, we are going to do a Oscar prediction episode.
Yeah.
But next week, we will try to watch another Oscar-nominated movie and do a review
TBD.
on that. Yeah.
You can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Letterboxd.
And join us next week as we continue our quest for the 5th star.